And how could you be that messed up? You know, I thought to myself. And
Was that any type of like realization for you of just kind of
yeah, it was kind of like a shot to, like, you know, like maybe this ain't for me, you know. But that didn't discourage me at all. I ended up going harder in the paint, you know, and I ended up let's see, I remember, I do remember a part where I said enough's enough. I need to do something to quit or something like that, you know. My dad and my mom were always like kind of there, like bits and pieces here and there, like they would jump back in my life. We had this guy that was on my dad's softball team. My dad played softball. This guy named Jim Pace, and he was on my dad's softball team, and he knew of me and about me and what I was doing and stuff like that, and pretty well. And he had talked to my dad and said that he wanted to take me in and try to help me out, you know. And that.
Not to cut you off. And how old were you at this time?
I was like 17 years old.
Say,
yeah.
You were young. Okay.
I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting in touch with them, and I ended up going to stay with Jim for a while, you know. And I ended up I was working like 2 jobs. I was working at Little Caesars, and I was working at Wendy's, because Jim's wife, his old lady, was working at Wendy's. And so that worked out good for about a month and a half. Not that long. Because I wanted to get high, and they were trying to control my paycheck and everything like that. And I was like, this ain't for me. So I just, I told him, I remember getting in an argument with them, and I told him, you ain't going to tell me what to do. You ain't my dad or nothing like that. And I got up and I walked out, you know, and that was it. Aside from that, you know, I went right back to where I was, you know. I went right back to the city park area, hung out around people down there, and let's see, I got in trouble with the law. Well, I was always getting into like little things here and there, like overnights, you know, like petty theft, stuff like that.
Is that how you were kind of supporting
Yeah.
at the time?
Yeah.
Supporting the habit. Yep.
I got I would get an inkling, like somebody would tell me about something, like, hey, this is a good spot over here, you know, to go hit, you know, this store over here or that store over here. And I'd hear the same thing about houses. And I'd never done a house before, and I figured, you know what, I'll give it a whirl, you know. And so I did, and it didn't work out too well for me. I ended up getting busted, and for a burglary, you get busted for a lot more time than you do for a petty theft. So they were trying to give me a 6-month program or 8 months in the county jail, you know. And I took the 6 months in the program because it said I could get out right away.
Yeah.
And so I got out right away, and I was right out there,
back
you know,
out.
yeah, right back out, back doing what I was doing.
And not to keep cutting you off, because you were still pretty young at this
Yeah.
time. You were about 18?
Yeah, I was about 18 then.
So I'm going to say things were kind of moving kind of fast, kind of
Yeah.
tended for you after you started using.
Yep. Things started accelerating. I had a job working at the East County Mall, the Antioch Mall, and I was doing surveys, and I was good at it. I mean, I'd make like $200 in one day, you know, which was a lot for me back then. The problem was if I could be sober long enough to go into work. So it started off, I was good, you know. I'd start off, you know, first month I worked there, I was there just about, you know, 3-4 days a week, you know, working hard. I found a room to rent in the newspaper, you know. I found one, and I paid like $700, I think it was, a month, and I had a place to stay. So that didn't last long either, you know, because both with the work and you know, my boss at the mall, he was an addict too. He was a crackhead. He was a coke addict, you know, and he loved doing it. He would try as hard as he could to stay sober, but once payday came, it's like 2 days before his paycheck came, he knew, you know, what was going to happen. He knew he was going to go out and buy, you know, and I remember him. What he did was he had these people that he knew that were in jail, and he knew their socials and stuff like that, and he would go and he would say these fictitious people lived there, or worked there, excuse me, and he would have it so they would be like me, but not. But the physical person was never actually there. You know, actually, obviously, the person was in jail, but he'd have me, and he would send me down, have me down, go down to the local the check cashing place, and I'd say I didn't have my ID. Well, they would call my employer and say, "Hey, is this the guy?" My boss would answer the phone and say, "Yeah, he looks like this, and that."
Yeah.
And they did an ID for me back then. And so I would go in and I would cash this dude's check all the time. You know, the dude never worked there. You know, he was just, and
Just collecting the money. Yeah.
you know, the boss would just fill out fake surveys for him and turn them in, and just make it look like it was a real person. And I remember he started breaking me off, like he would give me like a third of the check, you know, which was on $1,000. That's not too bad, you know. And then he started giving me less and less, and then at the end he wasn't giving me anything. And I said, "Screw this," and he kept telling me he was going to. But that was his way of making extra crack money, you know, to go spend on crack.
Yeah.
So I said, "Screw this." So I went and I had my buddy that worked there too. I had him drive me out to San Jose where he stayed at. I remembered how to get there, and broke into his house and took his whole big old thing of change. And I remember he knew it was me, but he couldn't prove it, you know. And I was just like, "Yeah, I got him," you know.
But you still went back to work after that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was gonna get as much as I could out of it. So I did that, and I ended up going back to. This is when I got busted for my first burglary, and like I said, I got out right away. I said, you know, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the program," and I just ran out the gate, you know, and I ended up doing good and staying on the run for quite a bit, you know, for about 6 months, 7 months, you know. But I was working and I was doing okay. I wasn't out there getting in trouble all the time. On the weekends, I would go out, you know, and do whatever, sell a little dope here and there, or whatever I could do, you know, to hustle. And when I stopped working there, is when I kind of got busted pretty quick. And then it dawned on me that if I don't have a job, or if I'm going to be out there running around, and things are going to end up bad pretty quick, you know. So I ended up going back, going to jail this time, and this time they told me it was going to be prison time. And I was like,
"You caught with something else, but this is based on not doing the program."
Yeah. They said, because you didn't go to the program, now you've got this, and plus I had new charges I was coming in with, so they said, "Yeah, you're going to go to, you can either take prison, or you can take, or they said I could either take a prison, or a strike, in like a county year or something like that."
County year, halftime.
Yeah, and then more charges came up, and they ended up saying, "No, that's off the table now. You're going to do prison time." So I ended up, for my first one, I got like 2 years. I ended up getting 3 years and a half, which was like a year and a half. And San Quentin at 18 was pretty intense.
Yeah.
In there, it's a lot different. Your friends on the street, it don't matter what your friends are on the street. In there, you're gonna hang around. You gotta hang around your people, and you know, and that's just. And they don't look at the color. It doesn't matter what color your skin is in there. You're gonna do pretty much what everybody else is doing. You know, you're gonna fall in line. And that was hard for me because I had a lot of individuals that weren't the same color as my skin, but that never meant nothing to me, you know. And it was kind of hard in there because, you know, I noticed that they were the same way as I was. They just kind of like, you know, and steered kind of clear of each other, and that was kind of odd to me because I was never raised like that. So when that was kind of tough, you know, especially because one of my good friends was black, and he was not having it either. He was like, nah, you know, he was trying to come over and say what's up to me and stuff like that, and you know, and eventually we talked and stuff like that, and things were cool. You know, I understood what he was running it down to me. He had been there before, you know, and he was running it down to me and telling me, you know, "Hey, look, man, just do what your people say, He's all, that's just the best way to go. That way there's no, and I kind of understood what he was saying, then, but still it was kind of tough, kind of odd for me, not coming from that kind of background really, I didn't really have a whole lot of, my street smarts were made kind of like,
You were still kind of fresh into it.
Yeah.
Essentially. And who did you have to run with when you kind of came into the prison?
The whites, the call them the Peckerwoods or whatever, the Aryan Brotherhood, they just, they run stuff in there, and you kind of just, you do what you have to do, but you do what they tell you to do, basically. And that was kind of tough having to listen to somebody else in there. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you got to make your bones right away. Somebody needs to get rolled up or something like that, and you're new. That's what you're going to do. You're going to go do that. And most of the time, it was people that were pieces of shit. To be honest with you, like a child molester or something like that. Got on the yard, he wouldn't make it off the yard. You make sure that guy got it good. And
you've had to roll people up essentially before. Yeah.
And and that was easy. It was easy at first because I fought a lot when I was younger. I knew how to fight, and they would just tell us. They would just say, "Hey, this guy's got to go." And I never thought to question very much back then, But now looking back at it now, I probably should have, questioned a little more. Like, why is this guy going? Why are we doing this? But I remember one time I just went in there and grabbed the guy's legs, and he was on the top bunk, and just pulled him off the bunk like that, and he went boom in his head, and he was out cold. And that was it. Turned around and walked out.
Yeah.
And yeah, that when I went to prison, it was a lot different but the same. I went from San Quentin to Susanville, and they sent me from Susanville to Lassen CCF, which is like a satellite camp. It's like a camp outside of the prison. It's where they send low level individuals, like to
a fire camp, isn't there something like
kind of like a fire camp, yeah. Uh-huh. But this was just like you went to a place where it was a county jail, it was half state, half county. Yeah. So you went to a place where it was half county, half state, and it was exactly like that. It was like half of it was a county jail, and the other half was us, and You had jobs. They had jobs like working around the fairgrounds and stuff like that, or you had jobs working at. I was a barber. I ended up being a barber, which was odd for me because I've never cut hair before in my life. They had me. I guess, and then I found out it didn't matter because there was one kind of haircut you were gonna get in there, and I was bald, and that was it.
Simple.
So there was no fades or nothing like that. If you wanted that, then you pay a couple soups extra and get somebody else to do it. But yeah, that was. And it was a trip too because we could smoke there, but the county individuals couldn't. So we'd have a little hustle going on, where they'd bring stamps and they'd have us on camera, but there was ways around it,
I was gonna say, did y'all have a lot more privileges to food, to getting things from like the streets and stuff like that?
Yeah. If you were in prison back then, you could get your loved ones could send a package in for you. They could go buy stuff at the store for you, not on no like. Catalog or nothing like that, you could go get pretty much what you wanted. But there was a kind of a guideline you had to adhere to, but still you could go get
still outside outside food.
Yep. Yeah. And then they could send that in for you. My mom and dad, I was talking to them then, and they'd send me packages here and there and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. In fact, when I got out, I had it worked out to my dad was going to come pick me up, and I was going to go stay with them for a while, and that was cool.
That was what, 21 years old? You were
yeah.
saying? Uh-huh.
Yep, and I remember my dad coming down from, my dad passed away not that long ago, so it's kind of hard.
Sorry if y'all lost too.
But,
definitely, brother.
I remember my dad coming to pick me up and staying overnight at Reno, and he came to pick me up, and that was pretty cool. He stayed the night, and I remember going back with him, and that was cool. It was a good time. And my dad had this job worked out for me at this Italian food restaurant called Linguini's in Clayton. And it was a restaurant and a bar. And it was cool right from the gate. I loved it. I I could go there and work and make good money. I mean, this was a busy Italian food restaurant, so you were making good money, and the waitresses there were hot. You know, one of them I ended up knowing from school. She knew me, and her hung out quite a bit. I ended up working my way up to bartender pretty quick there, and I became waiter slash bartender, and I was there every night of the week. Every night of the week I was there, and I would drink like a fish, you know, and that's when my drinking really spiraled and got out of control.
Were you done with the methamphetamines at
Yeah,
time as well?
for a while, yeah, because I was on parole now.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure that, you know, I didn't go back or violate, especially at my mom and dad's house. I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. But I ended up working there for a while. I ended up going to a concert, the BB King concert, and I was drinking like a fish. And I was driving too, so which weren't two good things. It was good because on the way home, me and my sister ended up getting an apartment together, and we moved out of my mom and dad's house. My little younger sister, and we were living at this apartment. She ended up dating one of my friends. She ended up married. She's married to him this day. Anyways, it was a straight shot to where we lived. I'd go from the restaurant. I'd go to the back road right there, and then boom, over the hill, and I was home. Lived in Clayton, and Clayton's not that far from Antioch. So, it was Antioch. I lived on Lone Tree Way in Antioch, so it was kind of the back right there, you know. Take Kirker Pass, yep. And so it was kind of a straight shot. But if I had to go anywhere else, I usually didn't drive because I was too drunk to. Well, this time was different. I decided I was going to go hit some bars, and I was going to go drinking. I was going to drive, and I ended up getting a DUI while I was on parole. And I remember telling my mom and dad that, hey, I messed up, you know. And they said, well, at least I was honest with them. And they said, we're gonna work it out. We're gonna deal with it. My parole officer was cool, I thought, but she wasn't that cool. I ended up calling her and telling her, you know, and I wish I wouldn't have, because if I wouldn't have, I don't think I would have went back. I don't think she would have found out. But I ended up calling her and telling her, and she said, okay, no problem. What we're gonna do is we're gonna have you go to these AA meetings, okay, and you go in, you sign in the meetings, you know, and just show me the slip that you're going and stuff like that, you know, and you know, just make sure you make it to your testing and everything. I go to the first meeting. She tells me that I go to turn in my slip, and she says, "You got." She said, "I'm lucky. You're lucky. I'm giving you this time, but you got 24 hours to take care of whatever needs you need to, and you're gonna end up having to go back and do a little time over the DUI." And I was like, man, this is ridiculous. And I remember telling my mom and dad that, and they were just kind of distraught, because they were like, well, this lady told you one thing, now she's telling you something different. And I was like, well, that's the way they are. They don't care, really. They don't care what you got going on or what you're doing. You're theirs, you know, until you discharge your number. And I remember having to go back and do the 6 months. The restaurant held on to the job for me. I was that good of a worker. Yeah, they held out on the job for me. My sister continued working there. You know, I had her working there too. I got her a job there. And when I got out, life was good. Things were going good. I ended up picking the dope back up again. And I had been kind of dibbling and dabbling a little bit here and there, you know, before I had left, but not that much, you know. And
what you mean, like in jail or?
No, when I was living back at my mom and dad's house, when I was at working at that restaurant, towards the end, right before I went to got the DUI, I was dibbling and dabbling a little bit here and there, you know. But because I was dating this chick, and she didn't mess around with drugs like that, so I kind of kept that from her, you know. But when she wasn't there, and she ended up living with me, we ended up moving out on my own, and renting this 1-bedroom apartment out, you know. And she ended up living with me, and that made it kind of hard for me to do, you know, dope. I ended up finding a way to do it anyways, but and yeah, that I ended up picking the dope back up, and I ended up losing my job at the restaurant.
Not being able to make it from.
Yeah, I ended up, like, I was stealing tickets. I was taking tickets and I was pocketing them and stuff like that, and things just weren't. I ended up showing up really late to work, and the owner's dad was there, and he was a dick, and he was the only one that I didn't want to deal with there, you know. And he was there when I came in late, and he just, whatever he said went, though. And he was just like, he started to yell at me, and I said, fuck this. I said, I'm not going to listen to you talk to me like this. I'm fucking out of here. I said, fuck this. After all the work I've done for you, you're going to treat me like this? And because I'm late one day? I said, screw this. So I walked out. I remember the owner's son and the dad's son ended up calling me and telling me that there's, the dad was so upset with me, there's nothing he could do to take me back, and I was like, it's fine. I had already had another place I could go work anyways. That didn't work out too well. I ended up working like 2 days there and ended up just quitting because you didn't make no money. You were a bartender, but it was so slow there, and so it didn't take very long before I ended up back in. I had a 1-bedroom apartment that I ended up trapping that place out. That place ended up had tweakers coming over there and stuff like that, and it wasn't a tweaker neighborhood. So they, the owner of the apartment, owner of the apartment complex found out pretty quick, and she was like, "Nah, she ain't having that." She said, "You got to move out." So I moved out and I lived with my older sister for a while, and my older sister lived in Antioch on G Street, and that was right by the city park where I used to live, and I took everything I could with me from the apartment and ended up staying with her for a while. But that didn't end up too well either because she was letting me use her car, and that was not a good thing to do. You ended up using her car, and I was going out to pick up drugs, right before she'd have to go to work, and stuff like that. My niece and my nephew were living there too, and it just wasn't a good. It wasn't good. I ended up having to go back though and do more time, and
to the prison again. You said?
What's that?
You said you have to go back again to prison?
Yeah. Yeah. This time I ended up going back for 4 years, and I ended up getting another strike. I ended up having 2 strikes.
What'd you go for that time?
The same thing.
4 years.
Yeah. Ended up going back in, and they
not to cut you off. You were breaking the houses still, or?
Yeah. Yeah. This time it had gotten worse because the place I broke into, the people were home and they were sleeping when I broke into the garage, and